Good morning, adventurers. My name is Ben, and welcome to a morning show where I sit around, drink some tea, and talk about D&D. We're so much hotter than I thought we were. Hot. Anyway, for T&D today, we have the Darth Vader I Make the Rules mug. It feels very appropriate with what we're talking about today. Went for theme today over really anything else. And inside of said mug, we have the Watermelon Lime Zinger from Celestial Seasonings. This is very good. In spite of the fact that it is scaldingly hot, it's a nice sort of lighter tea. It's 90 degrees where I live right now, so I feel like I really kind of need it. So that is what we are working with today with that. But that's not what we're here to talk about. Today, we're talking about the implementation of the rules in 5th edition, which feels like something I should have talked about a very long time ago, but I ever come to realize that I just haven't. It's a tough, sort of, not tough. It's a very big topic to talk about because it is it's a massive, massive undertaking to be able to actually implement the rules at your table because you have to have at least enough of understanding of them to be able to do so. So we're going to talk a little bit about the way that they work and how you can implement them and really sort of what it all comes down to, I guess. So you're going to have to stick with me here on this one because it's going to be a little bit convoluted, and I'm going to say it's up to you a lot, but that is sort of the reality. So let's get into it, shall we? First things first, and this comes actually directly from a TikTok that I made recently that got several people very upset with me, and I figured it would get people mad at me. And they got mad at me for the reason that I kind of expected. And when I say mad, I mean that they just disagreed with the way that I was ruling something. But I think it's important to sort of establish before anything else that one, if it's your table, you make the rules. Like if you're the DM at it, you make the rules. If you're a player at it, you can negotiate with the DM around the rules because a lot of DMs, especially newer DMs, will favor the rule of cool over rules as written. Just sort of the nature of the different generations of players coming in, though there are plenty of them that stick really tight to the rules because they see, Critical Role doing it or something like that. But even then, Matt fudges the rules a lot to make the story continue and be an exciting thing for the players. So ultimately, it comes down to whoever is running the game and the people around the table to actually implement the rules in the correct way, which means that you are in control of your own destiny there. You really, really are. And so if it's something that you wouldn't rule in favor of at your table, then don't rule in favor of it at your table. Argue against it, state your case, but don't, stop the game entirely. That's an important thing. If you're a player who's making your case, don't cause this major, major train wreck because ultimately the DM has the final say in it and you have to be okay with that and you need to move on from it. That's not the point. The other thing with the rules, and this is the one that really stems more from the TikTok specifically, is that the rules exist to set up guidelines and barriers for you to play inside of. If there is a set of rules that is populated, you play within those rules. If there is not a rule there, there's no barrier there, there's no guideline there, you can do the thing technically because there's nothing telling you that you can't. The rules exist as a set of... It's essentially a list of things that you can't do and exceptions to those rules. That is how rules work. In like class features and stuff, it's a little funkier than that, but with like attacks, spells, adventuring, social interaction, all of that kind of thing, it's a list of stuff you can't do and then exceptions to those rules. First and foremost. So make sure that you understand that if there is not something that specifically says, hey, you cannot do this, then you can probably do it. Because the other thing is, D&D specifically says in it, first, these rules are general guidelines to help you have fun. You are the ultimate authority at your table, blah, blah, blah. That's in the intro of the DMG. I want to say it's like page 4 or something like that. But also, you can ignore whatever you want. You don't have to do things if you don't want to. I had something else I was going to say as an attachment to that, but I can't remember exactly what it is now. So just understand that the rules exist for you to be able to operate within. But they are also things that you can say, no, we're not doing that, and move on from. That's fine. That's not a big deal. Shifting gears a little bit here, just a tick, not a whole lot, but getting away from the it's your table, do what you want. The rules also come in the form of thousands of pages of material. So it's okay to say, I don't know, give me a second, let me look it up. You don't have to memorize everything. This is a fundamental DM tip that I think more people need to actually understand. You don't have to know every single rule offhand. If you have the obsessive brain with the capacity to understand all of those things, and by that I mean if you have an obsessive brain and you also have the free space up there to just shove a bunch of useless information, then great, go for it. Do that. But everybody stops and looks stuff up. Absolutely everybody. Or you misremember things, and then 5 minutes later, one of your players looks at you and goes, actually, this is the way that's supposed to work. And you go, oh, okay, well, we'll do it different next time. Or, okay, let's retcon that if it hasn't been something that has created major problems so far. In the middle of combat, it's a little bit harder to, change a ruling 5 minutes down the line because you've gone through 2 more turns. But if it's something 5 minutes later and you've been walking down a road and it's been a narrative and there have just sort of been people talking back and forth, role-playing in the situation, it's probably okay to be able to retcon that. But just be willing to go with the flow. If you think it's something super important that you have to get right, then go ahead and stop the game and find it. Look it up. Google is your best friend. Just type out whatever the question is and add 5e after it, and you are good to go. You will find something you need. If you know where in a book it's going to be, grab that book, flip it open. If you have D&D Beyond, you can go to the book, go to the section, go to the chapter, and get into what you need to get into, and you're set then. You really, really are. But everybody makes mistakes. Everybody makes bad rulings. Everybody gets stuff wrong. And there is a reason that the rules exist with a final sort of referee in the DM seat, because there are different ways to interpret rules as well. If something is said, whoever is running the game has the final say on the way that is interpreted. Again, players, make your case. Don't just totally roll over, but make sure that you are accepting whatever the DM says, because the DM is the one that has the ultimate answer there. A very good example of that actually is I have a character named Belbin. I showed you guys his notebook last week, 2 weeks ago, can't remember which one. I love him dearly. He uses Tasha's Mind Whip a lot, and we were fighting a Hydra, and I said I use Mind Whip, and my DM said, okay, on which one of the heads? And in the spell, it says you target a creature, and that creature is affected by it. The Hydra's one creature, and I said, okay, I mean, in the spell it says, it is a creature, therefore it should affect all of them, right? And he said, no, it's got a bunch of different minds. They all can communicate with each other, but they are separate minds. And I went, okay, sounds good. And we moved on from it because I made my case. I said, this is what it says in the rules. And he said, no, that's not how it's going to work this time. And I went, all right, sounds good. Glad to hear it. And we just kept going. So it's that sort of give and take, because there are other things that we've done where, like Belbin specifically, is a very strange character in a lot of ways, but there's stuff that he shouldn't have been able to do that my DM has been like, yeah, go for it. Why not? It's not going to break the game. There's no reason for it to be an issue. And I went, okay, great. Sounds good. Excuse you. The cat just tried to jump up on me and got stuck in my clothes instead. I'm sorry. Because he did not make the jump all the way up. Not the point. Where was I? Right. Belbin. But I was done with Belbin. So we're going to move on from Belbin. The reality of the situation is that ultimately it comes down to what you want. You don't have to memorize all of the rules. You can make stuff up as you go along. If you don't open a D&D book ever and you run a game of D&D and everybody had fun and you felt like you told a story using D&D, great. Congratulations, you did. If you have only ever learned from watching shows, which, by the way, is a fantastic way to learn how to run games, learn how to implement the rules, learn when there are good times for exceptions and good times to not make those exceptions, you're set. That you are good to run, you're good to play, you're good to do whatever. There is an Adventuring Academy episode, which is a Dimension 20 sort of offshoot kind of interview show, where Brendan Lee Mulligan is talking to, I want to say it's Brian Murphy, who DMs NADPOD and is a player on Dimension 20, and they both say, essentially, if you've watched 20, 30, 40, 50, 300 hours of a D&D show, you know the rules enough to be able to run games. You know the rules enough to be able to play games. You're set. You honestly are. the cat has made it up now. You don't have to have read every book cover to cover. Just because some of us crazy people do that doesn't mean that you have to do that. It's just not necessarily the most difficult. It doesn't have to be the most difficult thing in the world. You can make it hard if you want to, but you don't have to. Implement the rules you think are important, and don't implement the ones you think aren't. If there is a rule standing in the way of your story, don't use it. Get rid of it. Throw it out. Burn it. It doesn't matter. The rules exist as a set of boundaries and guidelines, and you get to pick which boundaries and guidelines you actually observe. Important distinction: you don't get to pick which interpersonal boundaries and guidelines you get to observe and which ones you don't. That is a major problem. You should have a session 0 where you outline a bunch of things. You set everybody's player boundaries. You should check in on those periodically throughout the campaign, etc., etc. Those are not ones you get to just ignore. The ones that are written in books published by Wizards of the Coast, Kobold Press, Grim Hollow, whoever, those are the ones you get to ignore. You get to do whatever you want with them. If you don't like the way a feature works, change it. If you don't like the way a rule works, change it. It doesn't matter. It genuinely doesn't. Implement the rules that you think are cool. If you have rules from other editions that you think are awesome, use those rules instead. Doesn't matter. The minion rule from 4th edition is actually a really, really phenomenal rule that helps expedite combat with a big bad and a bunch of minions. If you don't know what that is, minions automatically succeed on, or they don't automatically succeed. If they succeed on a dexterity save, they take no damage. Otherwise, they die because they have 1 hit point, and it makes it so that you can chop through a bunch of the little enemies, but the little enemies still exist to pose a threat. That's the really watered down version of it, but that's the basic gist of it. It's a phenomenal tool that honestly they probably shouldn't have written out of 5th edition, but they did. So people use it using the 4th edition rules essentially and adapting it a little bit. You get to pick the rules that are in effect at your table. Make sure that everybody knows what those rules are. Again, session 0, if you want to change something as you go, very important. If you make a call in the moment, you find out later it was the wrong call, tell everybody, hey, I messed this up before, we're going to do it this way instead moving forward. If they have a problem with it, they can make their case. Otherwise, you're good to go. Like, if say you don't understand how Twin Spell works, maybe, and your sorcerer is Twin Spelling Fireball because you scan it really quick in the moment, you're like, yeah, sounds good, whatever. And then you go back and you read Twin Spell later because you're like, it seems really powerful to be able to fire off 2 fireballs for the price of 1 fireball and 3 sorcery points. And you realize, oh, you have to target a creature with it. Then just say, hey guys, I messed this up last time. I'm sorry, this isn't the way that we're going to do it going forward. And the sorcerer might go, okay, but this is my reasoning for wanting to continue to do it that way. And you might have to say, okay, well, either we can't do that because it's a weird power scaling balance thing, or okay, it's going to cost you double the amount of sorcery points to do that, or something like that. Limit their resource, make it a trade-off. D&D is about working together to find a solution, and I mean, ultimately, if the DM says no, then the DM says no, and that's the way that it goes. But work with them. And if your DM isn't open to collaborate and work on things and try and sort things out with you without a good reason, then I mean, I guess keep playing if you want to, but you might want to find a different DM, just maybe. And that's not to say you need to go to them, or you can go to them with every insane idea you have and go, oh my god, I have this idea to make a mechanical dragon so my artificer can murder everyone. That's probably a no, buddy. That's probably going to be something you can't do. So just think about it ahead of time. But know that the rules are flexible, the rules change, the rules exist to help support the game you want to play, the story you want to tell, and it's not the end of the world if 1, you don't know them all, 2, you get things wrong, 3, you accidentally ignore something, which I guess is the same as getting things wrong. So 3, make decisions that don't make sense or ultimately end up being reversed, and 4, don't be afraid to go to your table and say, hey, I did this wrong before. This is the way that it should work. There was a point at which I understand sneak attack so well now it's upsetting almost how well I understand it. But there's a point where I didn't, and I played a rogue in a one-shot, and I accidentally gave myself crit sneak attack damage because I didn't understand the difference between sneak attack and crit sneak attack. I thought that sneak attack meant that I was doing the critical hit. It was a whole thing. And so I accidentally did that for not like a long time, and again, it was a one-shot, but about halfway through, I stopped and I read the thing again, and I went, oh, I'm just wrong, because I had accidentally done it probably 3 times at that point, and I was just obliterating some of these enemies. Luckily, they were low-level things, and it wasn't a huge deal, but people make mistakes. Everyone's human around the table. Well, the characters are different. The people are human. Be kind, be ready to listen, and understand that the rules exist to serve the game you want to play. And again, if there is no rule in place to overturn an idea, then you can come up with a reason why it shouldn't work, or you let it happen and see what happens. I remember the thing I was going to say earlier. The general rules, like the broad strokes outlined in some of the books, are overruled by very, very narrow specific rules. So that's one of those unless told otherwise kind of things. Something either happens or doesn't happen. The thing that I made the TikTok about that people were not happy about was that I said simulacrums can be destroyed by create and destroy water because they are frozen water, and if you need to put them in an open container for it, have somebody throw a barrel on them and then they're in an open container. People were not happy about the fact that I was allowing that spell to target a creature, because it doesn't say you can target a creature in it, but it also doesn't say that it can't be a creature. So like, it's one of those things where I think I'm right, they think they're right, we both think we're both right. You're not going to come to a solution. That's where, if you're at a table with somebody and you want to work this out, you maybe try it, see what happens. If it's a major issue, then you don't do it again. Or you say, sorry, that's not going to work. And then the player has to go, okay, sounds good. And DMs try and hold yourself to the same standard that you're holding your players to. And it's as simple as that. So, implementing rules at your table. Pick the ones you want to implement. You don't need to know them all the time. Make stuff up on the spot and figure it out later. And be nice to each other and understand that everybody will make mistakes and everybody is human. Those are the 4 rules for implementing rules at a D&D table. That's literally it. There might be a couple other pointers, but if you follow those 4, you're going to have a good time for the most part. Which brings us to the end of what I was talking to us about today, which means we are going into the shows that we have today and this weekend. It is, again, my weekend is a little bit funky. It's not like super full, but it's not super empty. Mostly Friday today. So on Friday today, we have Mayhem D&D, Off the Rails, Oxventure, Just Roll With It, The Strings of Fate, Rolling with Difficulty, The World of Low, The Crown DM, and Coming Together Naturally. Then for Saturday, we have Dice Funk and Strange Hungers, and Sunday, we have Super Idols, Roll For Your Life, Grinning Griffin, Dungeon Drunks, Library of Nightmares, The Chaos Brigade, Rise of the Forsaken, Chromatic Dice, The Strodcast, High Rollers, and Tabletop Notch. Please go check them out. Let them know that I sent you if you do, because again, somebody will say something about it someday, and I'm going to think that it's funny. But until then, we're going to just keep saying it over and over and over again. So, that is everything I have to talk to you guys about today. Thank you so much for making me part of your morning routine. I really do appreciate it. And thank you so much in particular to my patrons. You guys are the ones that make this show possible. If you're interested in becoming a patron, check out the link in the episode description here. Usually on Fridays, I do patron-inspired episodes. This one was just really on my mind because it was something that was happening to me all day today. And so I wanted to get it out there. I wanted to say things about it, and I realized that I haven't talked about this specifically before. So I wanted to throw it out there. But yes, that is everything I have for you guys. So with all that said, don't forget, everybody, drink tea, play D&D, and keep on rolling.